Welcome back, America. We have a great guest now. Heather Mac Donald, Manhattan Institute, Thomas W. Smith Fellow. She's written several great books, The Diversity Delusion and The War on Cops. That book came out 5 years ago. I read it. I learned an awful lot. It's a very, very compelling book, Heather. Heather, one of the things that Thomas Sowell said about your book is this is a book that can save lives, which got me to thinking. All this attack on the police, all this attempt to degrade the cops is systemically racist, and which we know as a matter of fact is a lie. All this talk from Democrats and media types and athletes that the cops want to stop cars with black people for the purpose of harassing them and killing them. What is going to happen in these communities where you have these Democrat mayors who are slashing police budgets, or they're tying the hands of cops, or they're eliminating limited immunity? Who's going to suffer as a result of that?
Mark, it's truly astonishing. The facts do not matter to this narrative. The dead bodies do not matter to this narrative. It's not a hypothetical question. We don't need to ask it. We've already have data. The first major assault against police legitimacy that happened after the Michael Brown shooting in Ferguson in 2014 resulted in what I called the Ferguson effect, which is the combined phenomena of officers backing off of constitutional, lawful, proactive enforcement under this phony narrative that they're racist, and the resulting emboldening of criminals. So 2015, 2016, we saw the largest two-year increase in homicides in the last 5 decades. Another 2,000 blacks were killed, to absolutely no objection from the Black Lives Matter activists. Now, post-George Floyd, last year, 2020, saw the largest percentage increase in homicides in this nation's history. Probably another 3,000 blacks were killed last year compared to 2019. 4 dozen black children gunned down in their homes, in their front porches, attending birthday parties at barbecues by these insane, mindless retaliatory shootings. Not a single one of those black children's deaths were protested by the activists or by the politicians. So it's only going to get worse. The crime wave of 2020 is continuing unabated, and the 20 or so blacks who are killed every day in drive-by shootings are, as usual, passing without the slightest moment of recognition from the media or Democratic politicians.
I mean, isn't this really the core of the matter in terms of how cold-blooded this movement is against the cops? It's so cold-blooded, and it's so mindlessly ideological, and serves clearly the purpose of the Democrat Party. I mean, even right into the Oval Office, into the halls of Congress with Pelosi and Schumer. The effort now to pass a federal law that would reach into every nook and cranny of the United States and tie the hands of every police department. Isn't this the big point that you raise, which is we have death and mayhem going on, particularly in our inner cities, particularly as applies to blacks? And it's as if it's not even taking place. We don't know the names of these people. We don't know what these mayors are doing about it. We don't know what these governors are doing about it. We know these so-called civil rights leaders like Al Sharpton doing absolutely nothing about it. So the Democrats have the power over these cities, and they're attacking the cops. And the consequences are going to be, as Thomas Sowell pointed out, lost lives as a result of this. How do we even change this narrative? Is it even possible?
Well, it's political, as you say, Mark, but I would say it's even deeper than that. And for sure, the playing of the race card is a source of power that is truly inebriating to those that possess it. But it is also cultural. We have been having, for the last 4 to 5 decades, an obsessive conversation about phantom police racism in order not to talk about a far more difficult and uncomfortable problem, which is black crime. That is what's driving policing today, rightly so. Policing is data-driven. It's not different by race. Every, police command headquarters look at where people are being shot in drive-bys, where they're being robbed, and that is overwhelmingly in black neighborhoods. The victims are black, but here's what nobody wants to say. The perpetrators are black as well. Thanks to the breakdown of the black family and an extraordinarily dysfunctional, toxic inner city culture, you have levels of violence that are simply unknown to the rest of America. America turns its eyes away from this problem and blames the messenger, which is the police. The police don't want to have the fact that virtually every time a shots fired call comes over their police radio, meaning that somebody's been shot in a drive-by, they don't want the fact that they will almost invariably be called to a black neighborhood, being given the description of a black suspect if anybody is cooperating with the police for once. They hope against hope that for once it's going to be a white or an Asian suspect. It almost never happens. The data is clear. In New York City, for example, blacks are about 23% of the population. They commit about 3/4 of all shootings. Whites are 34% of the population. They commit 2% of all shootings. Those disparities exist in every city. And America, far from being white supremacist, far from, falsely or vindictively demonizing blacks, would rather blame itself for this problem or blame the cops than say, we need to be honest about the cultural breakdown and work on that, work on reconstructing the family, and for God's sakes, tell people not to resist arrest. Don't resist arrest, and you are, as a criminal, we're not even talking about don't commit crime, but as a criminal, if you're stopped by the cops, don't resist arrest, and you will virtually eliminate your chance of having an elevated use of force used against you, including lethal force.
All right. We'll be right back.